Howdy folks, welcome back to another episode of DevOps Diaries, and today I'm joined by Steve Fouracre. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot, Jack.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, Steve, and we today are going to be diving into a topic which I think a lot of us are still obsessed with. There's an argument for that we're kind of tipped over the peak of the hype curve for it, however, still very prevalent as we approach Dreamforce and the messaging and the marketing that's going around artificial intelligence as it pertains to software development. So I'm excited to get stuck into this topic with you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So Steve, for the listeners, give us a little bit of your background, who you are in the ecosystem, and a bit of your experience before we kind of dive into some of these considerations that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So as Jack said, I'm Steve Fouracre. I'm from a company called SES, which stands for Self-Evolving Software. And you can go to the website selfevolvingsoftware.com, learn a little bit more about the company. So I've been around the Salesforce ecosystem for approximately 14 years now. So all the way back when you just had a few things like custom objects and a few other little bits of pieces that you could actually develop in Salesforce. But of course, Salesforce has grown to be this mammoth multi-tenant cloud beast that it is actually today. So I remember all the way back down to 2012, I met Mark Benioff, and I had a great chat with him. And funny enough, that chat actually encompassed a little bit of AI. I was asking him a little bit of, do you see that artificial intelligence will eventually, come into the masses? And we had a little bit of chat about that. Move on 12 years ahead, and here we are, and this is exactly what we're talking about. So it's been quite an incredible journey. I've had an incredible journey myself in Salesforce, and prior to that, I used to work in things like PHP, .NET, and a whole lot of other different technologies as well.
Yeah. Steve, tell us a little bit about the opportunities that you see us as Salesforce professionals or software developers as it relates to AI in software development. Where do you think some of the opportunities are for us?
So AI can be used for many use cases, but speaking specifically about software development, to build software, you have to start with requirements gathering. AI can be used to kickstart building those requirements and then fine-tuning the requirements. And after the business analyst provides their input, it is important that the business analyst remains in control of this process. For example, AI may not realize that a requirement submitted as a vision statement could actually be quite dangerous. For instance, it could have GDPR implications or other legal issues. Okay. AI may not appreciate, as it is solely focusing on the specific use case. Okay. Next, we need to build the components, the code, and the declarative components as well. AI can certainly help to build code. SES is one of the tools that can be used for this purpose. Others include Einstein, Devin, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude and Sonar as well, just to name a few. AI can be used as a minimum to direct what declarative components to build. SES can also help in some part to build those declarative components, such as flows in Salesforce and objects and fields and those kind of things. AI is not just confined, however, to building new code. When issues are detected, but also debugging code, fixing the issue, retesting, and deploying, all under automated control of AI. I'm not the greatest proponent, however, of this strategy because I believe that the team should be involved at each stage to understand what AI has done and approve at each stage of the process until deployment. Once the code is built, it needs to be reviewed. Traditionally, the lead developer would normally review the code. I wouldn't advocate completely to dispense with this traditional approach. Okay. However, AI can assist ensuring coding standards are adhered to, using tools such as Sonar Source, Codacity, and Get Clayton in Salesforce, which I'm sure a lot of your members and readers actually use today. Now, next, we need to test what has been built. AI can help to create the test scripts for the testers using tools like Roost AI, and help to build automation scripts to test the system using tools like XLQ and Functionize, just to name a few. Later, I'll revisit this point and discuss some of the merits and also some of the risks that can be involved in that. Okay. And finally, we need to deploy our solution. And tools like, of course, GearSet, which is at the forefront of this, can use AI to automate the deployment from the repository to the target system. Okay. You can even complete the loop by assessing the mood of the users once they receive the brand new improvements by conducting surveys and using AI sentiment analysis to gauge the mood of the user. So AI is helping to improve the speed of software development using tools like Einstein and SES and so on and so forth. This pace will surely increase and remain unabated way into the future, Jack.
Yeah. What you're saying is that there are opportunities for streamlining across every part of the software delivery lifecycle with AI if we can harness it properly, and if we have an opportunity to invest in some of this technology and do it in the right way. And you mentioned there already things like, you know, GDPR considerations, or maybe if you're in the US, like HIPAA and the CCPA and all those kind of things. Are there some other key considerations that we need to be super mindful of when we're adopting this technology and using it to deliver functionality on the Salesforce platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a great question as well, Jack. Yeah. So using AI to build code, there are many considerations. For instance, where is the source of the actual code that AI produces? If the source is the internet, you need to understand some of the limitations and the risks involved. Solutions will be limited to generic type solutions using the internet as a source. I will not generate solutions that are very, very bespoke, tailored and unique to the schema and the processes of a customer's actual system. Okay. The source of information for SES, however, is the internal code of a system, and any partner's code that have accepted to share code with that actual system. Therefore, SES learns the bespoke setup of a customer's system. Okay, so that's a big difference. Code originating from the internet cannot always be guaranteed to work and fulfill the user requirements and to have thoroughly been tested, because you're just basically taking off things like blogs and so on and so forth. Yeah. The one thing we have learned from the recent CrowdStrike global outage is the fragility of complex systems, and the interconnectivity of complex systems is not just the IT industry's biggest strength, but it's also the biggest weakness and risk. The CrowdStrike episode underlines the importance of humans remaining at the epicenter of the development, quality testing, decision making, and strategic thinking. Okay. You also need to understand what information is shared with AI, and does that information persist in the large language model? Okay. Because then it can be reused with AI and without maybe your explicit allowance to do that. Your code is your intellectual property, remember. It is valuable and needs to be protected. So it's imperative you understand your intellectual property is how it's actually being used. Einstein does record an audit trail of what is sent to AI and the AI response as well. However, Einstein does not know if only data persists in the large language model, other than the fact that Salesforce has agreements with those AI providers that the data isn't to persist within the actual model. SES is native to Salesforce, and no large language model assets go outside of your system without your express approval. Okay, and that's guaranteed. AI can have a propensity to hallucinate as well, and that doesn't mean that AI has had a few cocktails on a wild night. Yeah. Hallucinations don't occur because the AI engine is at fault, but because the data of the large language model is inaccurate or has incomplete information. An AI cannot present plausible answers to questions. No AI is immune to this, which further supports the argument that the team must remain the puppeteer in control of the strings of AI. Okay. Another point is the toxicity of large language models is when biased views are given higher weightings, resulting in outputs produced by AI to be inherently biased themselves. Okay. The notion of something being biased can be argued by the author as actually factual, however. But since it's not feasible to pull on every single data point of the large language model, toxicity, unfortunately, is going to remain a thorn in the side of AI for a long time to come. Okay. And finally, you should know if AI will build new code or try to leverage your existing code. Mostly AIs are solely build new code, which leads to huge code proliferation and becomes unmanageable as the code size just completely increases out of control. So if you actually if you look at SES on the other side, SES is focused on leveraging your existing code, making maximum use of existing code, and minimizing code proliferation. Okay, in the process. So hopefully that answers it. It's a bit of a long answer, but hopefully that answers your question, Jack.
Yeah, it does. The way that the more I kind of talk about AI with people and the answers that I get back from people like yourself is I often liken it to kind of like an airplane, you know. So long haul distance flight, the plane itself or the autopilot machine does a lot of the flying once the wheels go up, but you would never fly a plane without a captain and co-pilot like sitting in the front seat. You need that human interaction, and I think that goes to say something about the trust, the implicit level of trust that we have in humans over technology, despite, you know, hundreds of thousands of successful flights on autopilot every single day. We can't do that without a human kind of at the helm. And something else that's quite interesting, you've started to mention hallucinations and toxicity and code proliferation and all of these things, and the idea that you started to go into about using code and like SES, for example, using code that exists in your systems and has a little bit more context maybe than just getting code from the internet or having ChatGPT go out and write some lines based on the internet is quite interesting. Is there any other ways that we make sure that AI code is relevant to but our orgs and business processes that you see? Because I think that's quite an important point.
Yeah, absolutely. And to answer that, we first need to understand all the different AIs out there, okay, and what circumstances each are better actually suited. Most AIs have no knowledge of your internal business processes and your mechanisms. However, certain AIs are designed to learn your system and processes, such as Einstein. Yeah. Einstein Copilot for one, not the entire Einstein, because other different flavors of Einstein are more fixed on the data side of things, and also SES. However, there are major differences between SES and Einstein. SES produces complete functions, whereas Einstein Copilot helps to produce code line by line. However, there is Einstein for developers that can produce complete functions, but the source of that information is the internet, and therefore Einstein for developers often won't be able to produce relevant solutions to your business processes and mechanisms, but can produce more generic type solutions. That's really its place, to be fair. Whereas SES is more focused on making the core part of your systems. SES only presents solutions when asked, whereas Einstein Copilot is constantly presenting the next piece of code. And for large systems, this can severely slow down the system. However, if you've got a code size of, say, roughly about 500,000 characters, Einstein Copilot can play certainly a positive role for developers. No, SES can share code from multiple Salesforce systems and have access to many potential solutions, whereas training Einstein Copilot is confined just to one single org. Okay, so SES has potentially got access to a really significant amount of code base. SES and Einstein utilize keywords, both of them do, as an ingredient to identify solutions. However, only SES also uses thesaurus, similar keywords and phrases to match with appropriate solutions. Salesforce are looking at actually Einstein using thesaurus in the future, but currently it doesn't do. Then on top of that, feedback and learning and adapting is always key to every part of software development principles, and remains applicable in the AI world as well. So with your feedback and learning mechanisms, you can continually train the model, improve the data validity, remove toxicity and potential hallucinations, and improve team and AI collaboration, and keep updated with new AI developments. Yeah, so you've got to keep that that continuous loop of learning and adapting as well.
Yeah. That goes for anything that we do. Like continuous
Absolutely.
learning and improvement is kind of a core tenet of DevOps, and DevOps in itself. When I talk about it and when I think about it, and I think in terms of that relevance, if you're talking about things like a thesaurus and continue to, I guess, in implementation is only starting to use it is only the first hurdle, right? You got to carry on using it and improving the experience, and actually be committed to AI being a core proponent of how you do things, and then AI as a result will get better the more you continue to invest in it, and it learns from itself and has all the context that you introduce. If you look at Salesforce's new releases or new custom objects or new clouds, that like we're all familiar with how keywords kind of blend together. Take Pardot and Marketing Cloud Account Engagement, for example, like the name changes that Salesforce go through fairly regularly. we need our systems to be used and continually used and improved on. Otherwise, it's going to kind of fall apart a little bit. If we just implement it once and rely on that being that one shot, you're kind of swimming against the current a little bit, because it's all kind of coming at you. I think how it kind of brings me on to another point. So we introduced AI into a system, and back at the start of the conversation, we were talking about users. We were talking about the business analysts with their requirements and the treachery of vision statements, maybe. How do we create a collaborative system and collaborative processes between users, BAs, development teams, so that we can adopt AI successfully in our organizations?
Okay. First, we need to understand what each person needs and when they also actually need it. Okay. Users, they want to provide a quick turnaround of answers to their questions and flexibility to action what they need and when they need it. AI-powered knowledge bases can quickly amalgamate fragmented knowledge, giving users more knowledge to both self-serve and also support agents to address issues. Okay. AI chatbots will help to resolve routine support cases, freeing support agents to focus on more complex cases. Business analysts, another kind of discipline, needs to understand the internal workings and mechanisms of IT systems. AI can be used to communicate with systems and asking systems to explain the internal workings of that system. And business analysts also need assistance to shorten the time taken to write new user stories, and tools like Atlassian Intelligence, Stories on Board, and ClickUp Brain can help to expedite that writing process for business analysts. And if you look at the development teams, they need to kickstart code writing, obviously, production of documentation, the testing side, and the deployment that obviously gives it does very well at. Okay. So there are many AIs that can help in all of that actual process on development, but it's essential that the outputs from one discipline becomes the input to the next discipline in a coherent and a very structured way. So if the business analyst over relies on AI to gain an understanding of a system, there is a risk that crucial elements will be missed. And relying solely on AI to write user stories won't give enough context to the developer, and subsequently the tester to complete their work as well. And the business analyst must supplement user stories with relevant documentation and hyperlinks, providing context to the story. And dependencies between stories need to be identified, ensuring the correct sequence of the stories are built by the developers. So that just shows that it's a marriage between AI and the actual users, be it the business analysts, the developers, etc., to collaborate together. Okay. Until specialist AI start to collaborate, humans will have to provide the glue, taking the outputs from one AI and use that as the inputs to the next. Okay. But now to have a highly functioning software development life cycle utilizing multiple specialist AIs combined with human leadership, the user will find a true utopia, I believe.
Yeah, it's again, that was really interesting what you're saying about that. There needs to be that point about not over relying on AI and that handover piece, like being so important. There needs to be like that human code review. I'm not talking about code as as we
Yep.
talk about code, but that human review of output and that crossover like being so important in terms of actually being able to rely on what AI is giving us, and the actual how it is then used and further down that development life cycle is quite an interesting point. And I've not really really considered that too much. And I think maybe that's like we're used to using ChatGPT to generate emails for us, or like give us ideas for posts or whatever it might be, but then we tweak it and then hand it over and say, hey, this is what we've got, this is the purpose of why we did this thing, and actually having that communication embedded as part of that process, and only kind of humans with that extra additional human context, because ultimately we're selling to humans, or we're working with humans in the long run. We're just using technology more and more to help us. And kind of to that end, what do you think the outlook is for Salesforce developers' careers, or developers' careers in general, as we look to adopt more of these solutions? What kind of shifts might we see in their roles and responsibilities as this technology gets adopted, assuming this technology does get widely adopted in the future?
Well, it's inevitable that the technology will get adopted, on the mass for sure. But to answer that, we need to look at the lessons from history, I believe. And any great technology change that has actually led to huge changes in the job market for sure. Some people say this time it is different. And if we focus on specifically the developer job market, developers are intelligent, well-educated people, and so are certainly better equipped to upskill and adapt to the changing job landscape for sure. As AI starts to consume much of the workload of developers, some developers will transition into more senior positions, and the others will actually move into become AI engineers and data scientists. But it is unlikely there will be a parity between the quantity of old jobs and that of the newly created jobs. Companies may simply decide, okay, we'll expand our development roadmaps, and therefore we'll keep the headcounts at a static level. But other companies will inevitably decide to actually funnel part of the budget for the software development to other parts of the business, such as sales and marketing. Okay. Therefore, I believe it's inevitable that a percentage of developers across the market will unfortunately lose their jobs and will have to switch to a different career path. Exactly if that percentage is going to be significant or minor remains to be seen. But what is clear is that there lies ahead a seismic change in the job market for sure. Yeah, because of this new technology.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things we talk about. You spoke earlier about like the continuous learning and investment, and I think that's, as we look, everybody looks at their careers, is like, how do we continually learn and adapt to this new technology, or how do we make decisions that best support the adoption of new technology? I think if you even go back to if you take factory workers, for example, the introduction of like CNC machines or what have you. I was actually just in Louisville, Kentucky, and looking at the Louisville Slugger baseball bats being made, and it used to take a human half an hour to hand turn a baseball bat, and now a machine does it and turns out 45 bats an hour or something like that. And like you can kind of see these shifts happen in other industries at different times. Those factory workers are going to be like, okay, how can I train to be an engineer to look after the machines and adapt to the changing skills and technology that's going to be required to meet the needs of business, and how we consume products and how we show up in the workspace for others. One kind of final question for you, Steve, as well. You talked a little bit about Einstein Copilot and some of Salesforce's offerings, as well as SES, of course. Where do you think the suite of AI products and maybe Data Cloud as it exists right now, that new suite of AI products sits, and what do you envisage for it in the future? I know you kind of touched a little bit on this already, but what do you think the future looks like for things like Einstein Copilot and the other offerings that Salesforce have right now?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I would say that's actually a really great question to end on as well. AI is going to find its own niche area. Well, each AI is going to find its own niche area that it specializes in. For example, ChatGPT and similar AIs are great at hoovering up vast amounts of knowledge from the internet to become the next future search engines, and highly specialized systems such as AI, such as Firefly, that translates meetings into summaries. Yeah, none of those are actually used in. Firefly is not used in Salesforce. However, we'll see what is going to change in the future. How I believe all AIs are going to come together. Einstein is great at understanding your business data, providing insights, strategic direction, and an increased return on investment on your proprietary data and your code as well. And AI specializing in software development, for example, Devin and FCS and Einstein Copilot, enable developers to build generative code. And currently, all these AI work in isolation. I feel the future will bring an interconnected AI world where the outputs of one AI will become the inputs of another AI. So I think that's exactly where things are actually going to shift to, and also with bi-directional flow of inputs and outputs between AIs, which will lead to an exponential growth of understanding and output. We're already seeing a glimpse of this future with Einstein, which today connects with ChatGPT to augment its own capabilities. And if we think about it, this is exactly how the human brain actually works. The brain doesn't work in isolation, and the different areas, the different neurons, and all the different particular areas of the brain communicate together, and information flows back and forth between neurons and areas of the brain. So I can see a lot of the AIs, and we mentioned Firefly and whatever else. I can see all of these coming together and potentially interacting on Salesforce. One other thing is that humans need to think, or else we begin to lose what it means to be human. Okay, AI is here to stay. We need to learn to coexist, and our greatest challenge will be how to stay in command of something that surpasses our knowledge, our intellect, our reasoning, our decision making, and our adaptability. And is that even possible? Okay, let me leave you with one last thought. Humans naturally want something, whether that is to learn something, to see something, to meet someone, to go somewhere, or achieve something. Will AI one day want something? And if so, what will that be?
Yeah. Well, why? I think that's going to leave a lot of people with food for thought for sure. Steve, thank you so much for your perspective and where we might be heading here. Really interesting conversation and really interesting points for the listeners that have listened to this episode and want to find out a little bit more, or maybe start a conversation with you about some of these topics in more detail. Where can they do that?
Yeah, for sure. So you can have a look on our website, which is self-evolvingsoftware.com. You can communicate directly with me at Fouracre, which is Fouracre at selfevolving.com. And a little bit hot off the press, we are soon going to be launching a free version of SES. It's a much watered down version of the paid version of SES, but you'll be able to actually get a little bit of understanding of how SES works as well.
Okay, perfect. Steve, thanks so much for your time, and hopefully to catch you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.